What was it that made You Won't Help Me so successful in its previous runs?
I think a lot of the feedback we got from people that came to watch it was about how unapologetic it was and about how truthful it was and about how we weren't scared to show things on stage that really happen. Like a lot of the time when you see domestic violence depicted on TV or you see it in theatre, it's more often than not talked about. Like it's just talked about. So it'll happen like behind closed doors in a different scene, and then the very next scene will be people talking about it happening. Like you never actually see how bad it can get. You never see how awful these situations can be. And I think with You Won't Help Me, the fact that we weren't scared to show every single step of this relationship and every single step of it going from being really happy to then this awful toxic situation, I think that's what kind of drew people in the most. And I think that's what people responded to the most, because they could finally see that actually it's not just a case of like, oh, she could just leave, because they could see that it wasn't possible.
What was it that made you want to take on the role of David?
To be perfectly honestly, initially I did not. So the role I wanted to take, for sure, because I think he's a bit of a complex character. I think he thinks he's doing right, and that's something that I would love to try and portray to an extent. But then I saw the actual play, and I got freaked out a little. It's a scary thing to have to do. I'm not giving away too much from the play that's not already in the blurb or anything like that, but I think, so there's a few things. One is, every woman that I know has gone through some version of harassment or abuse or something. Every single woman, and that fact is crazy, and it's everyone that I've talked to. They've told me stories about it. So bearing that in mind, that's partly why I want to take on the role of David, so that this story is actually told, so that people see this side of it. Because I don't know how many men you talk to about these things, but some of them do just say, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just do this? Why don't they? And it's bullshit. Some fun reasons why I wanted to take on David, though, are I love psychological thrillers. I love Mads Mikkelsen in everything he plays as a villain. And I love competing in like games or sports or anything like that. And this role kind of puts a lot of those things together. Whereas if I can take it on in a way where I feel like I'm actually trying to get things out of people, or trying to compete, or trying to not just do what happens in the play, all the ulterior motives, it could be quite an I was going to say fun, but just quite an interesting challenge to do.
Why do you think it's important that stories like this are told in theatre?
I think it's important for the people that go through it. I think I spent a very long time myself not having a voice afterwards. And people often think that when you leave a domestic violence situation or you leave an abusive situation, that's the end of it. And then you could just go on and be happy. What they don't tell you is actually for years afterwards, you're still not yourself. And I think a lot of people really struggle to find their voice after they've been through it. I think people that go through it definitely don't have a voice. And I think for me, myself, it could have gone one or two ways. Like writing this, I could have been one of those people that let it affect them forever in a negative way, and then I turned into an awful person and never had another relationship again. Or I could be that person that puts it into a medium where I can share my story and I can show people that you can have a life after domestic violence, you can get out and you can be safe and you can be happy. And also, it's really important that people know that they are lovable, because it's one of the main things that you lose when you're in that sort of relationship. You think nobody else will ever have you, when actually it's the complete opposite.
Why do you think it's important that stories like this are told in theatre?
Yeah, well, the story itself is, I mean, I think all actors would say the same thing. I love stories. Stories are so important, right? They let us feel things that we don't normally do, see things we don't normally see. try to understand things from different ways. I mean, stories go back way, right? When you think about Hansel and Gretel, don't go into the woods. That's what a story was trying to teach. This is trying to show people things they might not see themselves or have seen themselves. And this is why it's important for theatre, because if someone's actually gone through this themselves and comes to see it in a theatre, they can then talk to the cast about it afterwards. They can talk to the people about it afterwards. They can have that hopefully released that maybe they've never told anyone this kind of stuff before. Maybe it helps them have conversations with their partners about previous experiences. That's why I think it's why this story and why in the theatre.
What are you looking forward to the most about this run?
I think with this run, there are a few things that I took away from the last run that we did that I want to kind of expand on with this one and with this cast. And obviously it is a brand new cast attempting this. So obviously there's lots of fresh eyes on it. Obviously I've seen it and worked on it loads of times now. So it's nice to have like all of those fresh eyes and fresh ideas for the characters and things like that. And I think really the thing that I'm most excited about is the fact that You Won't Help Me gets to be told again. Because for me, that's so important, and the fact that people actually want it back.
What are you looking forward to the most in the rehearsal process?
You people. You're all here. Honestly, the cast, hopefully, getting to know some cool people, working directly with the writer and actor, Phoenix, who's the main other person in the role, exploring. Again, it's that kind of idea a little bit of the darker side of my role and the villain side of my role, exploring how to tap into that in a safe environment where people actually are safe and respected, and being able to portray that is actually quite exciting. I don't know if that sounds bad, but it's actually quite exciting.
Is it difficult playing the role of Sarah?
This is actually a question that I get asked a lot because Sarah she's based on me. She is me. And it's one of the questions that I get asked a lot. When I first started performing You Won't Help Me back in 2024, very early 2024, it was ridiculously difficult. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be when I was writing the play. However, I feel like the more I've done it, and the more that I've got this play in front of stages, and the more the audience has responded in the way that they have, it's become almost cathartic for me on a personal level, because I'm finally able to tell my story and tell the world what happened to me, and nothing's going to happen. Like, I can just tell my story, and if anything, it's going to help other people that maybe are at the beginning of a domestic violence relationship, or people that have been through it and they don't have their voice yet. And really, to me, that's like the biggest middle finger up to the guys in my life that did that to me, and they would hate that. So yeah, it's not hard anymore.
Why should people come and watch You Won't Help Me?
We are actually at an interesting point in society where we are trying to teach young boys consent. We are trying to teach a whole population of younger people things that I wasn't actually taught, because the whole argument about consent started when I was at university, so that didn't happen in my school. And again, I've watched TV series before, things before where with kind of abusive relationships in them or things like that, and I think, well, why doesn't she just leave at that point? Why doesn't this happen? Why doesn't... If anyone... Here's the pitch. Do you want to ask someone in an abusive relationship why they don't just leave? Come and see this show, because it's a lot more complex than you think. That's pretty much why I think some people should come and see it, to kind of open your eyes and have that full conversation for something you've never experienced. That's not to the women watching this, that's to the men.
Why should people come and watch You Won't Help Me?
I think You Won't Help Me is a really important play, and obviously not just because I've written it. I think You Won't Help Me is really unique in a sense that it's talking about a really horrible, very real subject, but from the experience of someone that's actually lived it. And I don't feel like there's many plays that do that, especially not with domestic violence. And I think to have a play that's actually based on real life events, when people come and watch it, it kind of takes the fiction aspect away from it. And they watch the things that are happening to Sarah on stage, and it kind of hits people more. And I think it's more like watching somebody's life rather than watching a story. And I feel like if we're going to share this message and people are going to pay attention to this message, that's the best way to do it.
If you could choose 3 words to describe You Won't Help Me, what would they be?
3, cutting it down. Raw, infuriating. I want to say hopeful, but that's not for my character, but hopeful at points. Yeah.
If you could choose 3 words to describe You Won't Help Me, what would they be?
Unfiltered, unapologetic, and intense.